The Evergreen Media Network Studio, powered by Scott Tree Services.
Hey, and good morning to you. Welcome to Uplifting the Uplifters, where every single month we bring in another uplifter here to our Uplifting the Uplifters. And today is no different. Last month we had our amazing Captain Angela Jones from the Indian River County Sheriff's Office doing some amazing things over there at the jail. Today we brought you your Indian River County Sheriff, Eric Flowers. Thank you for being here today, Sheriff.
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Before we get to Sheriff Flowers, this show would not be possible if it wasn't for the generosity of our donors. And once again, we got Adam Ogilve, owner of Orc Services. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, hey, everybody.
We also got Pedro Bernabe, your realtor from Dale Sorensen.
¿Qué pasó?
Thank you, Pedro. That was Espanol.
It was German.
Thank you, Pedro. So, Sheriff, let's address the elephant in the room. We've been doing some great things in the last year or so. Everything from a $20,000 grant from Home Depot to even as recent, and I know you don't like to toot your own horn, Sheriff, but we had a young lady that would have been homeless, and you reached out in collaboration with our human services. Thanks also to OTG Liquidation for all your fine needs over there on US 1. But, Sheriff, you also helped us out and provided some funding so this mom would not be on the street. So I want to thank you very much, Sheriff. So let's talk about us. How did this happen, Sheriff?
Sure.
Take it away.
So, the elephant in the room, and I think that's a great way to put it, is that prior to my becoming sheriff, you were sort of an activist, right, in the community. And there's a lot of people now that say things to me like, I can't believe you work with Michael Marsh. I can't, all this stuff. And I think that a lot of those folks know the old Michael Marsh. I don't think they know where you're at today in 2024. And, I think it goes back to the history. And, even when you were doing your activist stuff, I still listened to what you had to say because I knew there was some truth in what you were saying. And what it all started with is your friend Corey that was killed by law enforcement, and you were advocating for body cameras.
Yes.
And so for me, body cameras were something that I wanted not just for the community, which was your movement, but for my guys to protect them. And as we sit here in 2024, thinking to some recent incidents that have happened, we had one where one of our female deputies is on a bus fighting with a guy and her body camera's on. She can't get to her radio, but our real-time crime center is in the body cam watching what's happening, able to call help for her when she can't. And so that's an incredible technology. And I'll tell you, our folks rely on their body cameras for documenting reports, for a second set of eyes to watch what's happening out there. And so it's more valuable to us than it is to the public at this point, but it's also worked on the other side to squash the complaints. When things come in, immediately Internal Affairs can go there, watch the video. 99% of the time, the complaints that come in now are courtesy type violations, and they'll say, well, I didn't like the way the deputy talked to me, or I didn't like this. And when we look at them, it's mostly that people don't like what we have to say, right? That the law isn't in their favor, or the situation, circumstances don't work out for them, and they're upset about that. And a lot of times our deputies are frank about that. They'll say, no, ma'am, this is how the law is. And so I'm incredibly blessed to have been in a position to be able to put those in, immediately when I took office as sheriff. It was something you wanted. And so I think that opened the door for you and I to start having a conversation. And we started with soft meets in my office, and over time, it became clear that your desires for our community were aligned with mine. And so, we've had many talks about, and now the things that we're doing in the jail are just incredible, but I'm proud of the partnership. And so that's when people say things to me about, oh, you're with, Marsh, whatever, like, look at what we've done, right? Yeah, but look at what we've done. Look at what we've done. And so I attribute the body cams to you being the one that says, hey, I think this is a good thing. And it opened my eyes. When I went to the Florida Sheriff's Conference and I looked around and saw all these smaller agencies than us that had them. Yeah. And the sheriffs are talking about all the positives. I'm saying, why wouldn't I do this? Why would it was 2020 when we did it, 2021. Why wouldn't we do this? And it's been nothing but positive since. I never hear a negative thing about body cameras, ever. And the sheriffs that don't have them yet, shame on you. Yeah. Shame on you for not doing it. It's good for your people.
100%.
Even if not for the community, for your people. It's good to protect them.
Transparency.
Absolutely. It shows what happened. And it's not perfect. It's not the NFL. And even now they've got all these crazy, I watched a guy sliding into home plate and they've got this 360 camera that they can do now to see stuff. We don't have that in law enforcement, but at least we have something now.
Sure.
We didn't have anything
it's kind
before.
of crazy to think the sheriff's department never had that until he came in the office. I mean,
but many of them didn't.
Yeah.
In 2015, that's when Corey was killed in Palm Beach Gardens, a very small agency.
Yeah.
And I remember during that time, I was actually talking to Sebastian, and I said, you look at what happened in Palm Beach Gardens, a very small that you would never thought in a place like that. I mean, prior to that shooting, they've never had anything close to that magnitude.
Sure.
But what do body cameras give? Accessibility, accountability, and transparency. Yeah. And I think it goes to, I couldn't imagine being a law enforcement officer and have to worry about a grand jury indicted me when I just want to get home to my family and I had to shoot in self-defense. Yeah. So to me, it's a no-brainer, like Sheriff said, that to not have these things.
And here's the thing. Two of the biggest sheriffs out there, everybody knows these two names. They tell me all the time, why aren't you more like these guys, right? Sheriff Grady Judd and Sheriff Wayne Ivey. Everybody knows those names. Yeah. Neither one of those guys have body cameras in their agency. Neither one. They're massive agencies. And think about all the times, I mean, we've got On Patrol Live riding with us now, and so we get more additional coverage and things that are out there. But how many times have we released body cam footage of our guys being heroes, of amazing incidents, saving animals.
And quickly.
Quickly. Our team does an incredible job with that. But absolutely. But for us to be able to show that to the public, and it endears us to the public, right? People in our community love law enforcement. They want to support us. And when we show them that we're doing good with their tax dollars, it's a win for everybody. Yeah. It's such a good thing. It really is.
That is one of the things that I have to say in Indian River County. I've been pulled over a couple times.
Pedro,
thankfully, but everybody's been so nice and understanding of the situation. As far as like when I got pulled over in Texas, and visiting family. Even though I was nice to the guy. It's not the same. He looked at me like it was just another Hispanic guy, and it's not the same. Here I tell my wife all the time because she's always like, oh no, police this, police that, and I'm like, well, listen, I get to actually interact with several of them, and just the way that we are treated here as
definitely
residents in the county.
I think we all feel a lot safer in this county.
Oh yeah.
Well, I can tell you it starts at the top. I'll tell you what's today, Friday. Right. I did a traffic stop yesterday. I was up on US 1. This lady pulled out in front of me, and she kind of skirted the traffic device. She wasn't supposed to go through. You know how there's those cut throughs in US 1? Oh, yeah. They're supposed to turn one way. Well, she used it the wrong way. I said, okay, I'll give you one. Right? I'll give you one. Then as I'm trying to catch up to her, she's going very fast on US 1. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready to turn this way. So she turns in front of me. She blows through the stop sign when she turns. I go, okay. So I stop her and I said, are you going to obey any of the traffic devices? Just any of them. And she was just like, I'm so sorry, I'm late for work. I said, okay, well, we want you to get there. And so, I think it starts at the top by me having those interactions and doing those things. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I still do traffic stops.
Are you the guy from the posters?
Yeah.
I've seen it on patrol.
Yeah. I mean, usually when I do it, it's something really dumb like that. As a matter of fact, the last few traffic stops that I've done, this lady wasn't. She was a home healthcare person, but the last few have actually been Uber drivers and Uber Eats drivers. And what I find is these folks are so busy on their dash with their phones. They got 2 and 3 phones that they're running with that Uber Eats stuff. Yeah. They're not paying attention, and they're going to kill somebody. And so I'm sure everybody else is seeing that out there too. And so that frustrates me more than anything. And I end up stopping those guys more than anybody else.
So speaking of interactions, because when you took office, this was one thing that was mind-blowing to me, and me and Pedro got to see it very early on, is that you have a law enforcement officer for the homeless, dedicated to domestic violence, dedicated to even our students.
Yeah.
I mean, you've really brought community policing into the sheriff's office. Can you touch on what this looks like and explain it? Because in 2020, when I worked at the rehab as a case manager, and it was either 2021, Burke was going out, Deputy Burke, into these homeless communities. Not to go in there and say, hey, you're trespassing, I'm going to lock you up. And obviously, if they're acting up, they need to get locked up.
Yeah.
But just checking on them.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that, because that's not usually what law enforcement does, right?
Yeah. So, I came through the ranks. I worked my way all the way up from the bottom. I started as a deputy, and I was a detective for a long time, detective sergeant. And one of the things that I know about these homeless camps is, unfortunately, and it's been happening for years, is that we have these folks who have, a lot of them have mental health and substance abuse issues. They don't have the best health out there, and a lot of them pass away in the woods. And it's difficult when you're a detective and you get called out. You have absolutely no idea who this person is. They're probably from another state. It can take you a long time to clear it up, and you've got to figure out, who the relatives are. And so, it's one of my goals, just compassion and humanity, to go out and identify everybody that we've got in the community that's homeless. We've actually got a little running database that we keep track of. Scott enters that in, and we keep track of where they're at. And so we let our patrol guys know to check on them. And obviously, we have fights out there. They get drunk and cause problems. And so we want to know where they're at. The other thing we do is we contact the landowners and make sure that they know that there are people on their property, because there's a lot of liability with that, right? So some of them don't care. Some of them don't even live in the United States. Some of them own just pieces of land, and they say, I don't care. Some of them we can't even get a hold of. But there are other people who live in our community that go, oh, I had no idea that there was an encampment in my woods that I own. Please help me fix this problem. And we take care of it. And so we work humanely with them. We'll say, hey, the owner has decided they don't want you on their property. We got to find somewhere else for you to go. We do our best to work with them. But that was just one of many missions. The domestic violence position. I was on the board of Safe Space for 6 years. I was the president. And Fort Pierce Police at the time had 2 funded positions that were detectives assigned to domestic violence. And so I thought that was amazing. And I really wanted to try and get some of that funding. It's since dried up. So there isn't funding for it, but we did it anyway. We put our own detective, and I have Detective Greeley assigned to that position. She's really doing a deep dive. So our patrol deputies still respond to all the domestic violence situations, but we recognize that there are serial abusers out there, and there are serial victims. There are people out there who consistently find people who are going to victimize them. And so we're working on both sides. We take a look at the suspects and say, hey, you're living an unhealthy lifestyle. You've been arrested multiple times for domestic violence. Can we get you in a program? Can we get you, anger management, things, maybe it's substance abuse a lot of times. Can we get you to work through those things? Because we don't want your family to be hurt. And then on the victim side, we talk to them about, hey, you're making some choices here that are going to affect your life forever. And, maybe you're not picking the best people. Can we help you work through that? And it's all about being available when people need us, right? That's what I've said along the way. From that side of the homeless, I've said, we need to put in a superhighway, because whether you're a victim of domestic violence, you're somebody who is a chronic homeless person with mental health or substance abuse issues, when you finally make a decision, I'm done. I've had enough.
Sure.
There are so many barriers to success. And if we put in a super highway for these folks where they can step off of the day-to-day life and just we help them succeed, it's really hard for them to not succeed. And so I say the same thing about the reentry program. Let's put in a highway. Let's let these people succeed. Let's give them an opportunity. And 48 people have been through that program, and only 2 of them have come back. So I mean, there's something to that. And the things that we're finding with the domestic violence is the same thing. Is when we engage with these folks and we give them the tools that they need to be successful in life. Because maybe they didn't have great parents. Maybe they didn't have a good upbringing. Maybe they, it could be anything. And so maybe that's how they grew up. And we need to tell them, hey, this is not a healthy relationship. If you come home every day and you live in terror and you're being abused, that's not a healthy relationship. And so we do our best to try and help those folks.
Before we get to the student, and go ahead, Pedro.
I just wanted to say, that's one of the first ways I think that you and I met. Is in a lot of these meetings of mental health and substance abuse.
Yes.
And when I at a treatment center, and I've done treatment for about 11 years now. One of the things that was dear to me was, and I talked to Marsh at that point. I'm like, hey, listen, we're gonna get. He's got his own one deputy dedicated to this, which is Deputy Burke. And I was when I travel all around Florida to different treatment centers. And I've told him about the partnership we had and the stuff that you were doing in the county. And people were amazed because they're like, we don't have that type of law enforcement, support.
No
where
true community
we are.
police.
Yeah.
And to be honest, they're like, really? What? And I'm like, yeah. This is what we're doing. We have the case manager. We do this. We really try to figure out how to help these guys that really don't have insurance, don't have a way to get to treatment. Mm-hmm. But now that you're open up a way of communication now, if they do want to come to treatment, it's readily available for them. Yeah. So I think that's one of the big things that, for me at least, being in the mental health world was a big step.
And we're getting ready to expand that a little bit more. New Horizons has a mobile response team, and we have a meeting coming up later this month. I think they're going to start riding with our deputies at peak times. And so we're going to have like a caseworker actually in there helping out our patrol deputies with some of the mental health things. But I travel the state and talk to law enforcement, and some of the things we're doing here, I mean, my customer service is one that I ask all the time. Does anybody else have customer service? I have yet to find another law enforcement agency that has dedicated customer service people.
How many calls roughly does customer service get a year?
Over 4,000. I was 4,000, I think, the last time I looked at it. I mean, it's insane what they're handling, and everything. You know, I send them stuff. Last night, I was out and somebody asked me a question. I sent it to customer service in 15 minutes. I had an answer back of this is what happened. This is what's going on. Our customer service team is absolutely incredible. Yeah. We've got 2 ladies. If you don't know about it, download our app. The customer service number is right in there. You can punch it from your app, and it'll dial directly to them. You will get a call back within 24 hours. That's my guarantee. And I don't think there's a whole lot of government, other than probably Carol Jean's office, that will guarantee you that you're going to get a call back. You know, and that's what I hear so oftentimes from people is, you know, they get lost in government. They get lost, and people don't always understand what they do. They call us and they say, oh, I want a traffic light added here, or I want speed bumps, or I want, you know, a turn signal added. Well, that's not us. That's traffic engineering. Yeah. My customer service will help them get to what happens beyond that. I can't tell you, but they will at least get them to the right
to
people
navigate to the right,
to ensure that they have the help they need.
And in turn, this is keeping your men and women, these deputies, to the actual crimes.
Correct.
And I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, the first call, and I joke about it all the time, but the first call that customer service handled was we arrested an elderly gentleman. He lost his false teeth in the backseat of a patrol car, and customer service went out, physically located him, and returned him to the gentleman. If you're a watch commander, a lieutenant that's out there, you're dealing with use of force issues. You're dealing with, you know, all the things that happen in a 12-hour shift, from guys requesting vacation to injuries to all the things, workers' comp, all the things that happen. I want them focused on those things. I want them focused on the things that I need my people with guns and badges to do. Customer service is over here to handle all that stuff and take that off of it. They do a great job of it.
That's great. Before we get to the students, let's go back to the domestic violence victims. You just created a whole lovely little room.
We did.
For these victims. Can you talk about what that looks like?
Not only did we get some attention on that, we're actually the lead story on the National Sheriff's Association newsletter about that, because nobody apparently has ever done that before.
That's phenomenal.
With the help of OTG and some other donors, we were able to take a room and convert it to basically a living room and a child's bedroom inside of our sheriff's office. And so we often have victims. And we've always had these soft rooms, we call them the blue rooms, where we can interview victims that aren't, you know, the sterile interview room that you see on the TV shows. We have those places, but they all have cameras and mics and all the things that we need to capture. There are times where we need to sit down with people and just say, are you okay? And it might be some of our own people. It's a comfortable room. It's got, you know, just the comforts of home inside of the sheriff's office. And so I'm really proud of that. That was a great mission. Kudos to Felice, our director of in charge of our victims advocates. She does an amazing job, and she's the one who came up with that. And
there's some amazing people.
Really is.
Felice is amazing.
Oh yeah. I had Althea, a victims advocate, and I didn't realize these are volunteers.
Some of them are.
Some of them are volunteers. I mean, she was amazing. My father was in the hospital. She came and visited, and I was just like, wow. And they just spend the time, and you could tell they generally enjoy what they do. Shifting gears a little bit, talk about students, Sheriff.
Yep.
I used to go to school board meetings. I'm retired. I don't miss those meetings. But one of the hot topics were these guns on campus.
Yeah.
And I listened that literally immediately, conversation between you and the superintendent to get these metal detectors. Can you talk about how you're keeping these kids safe? Because as a father, we're all fathers over here.
Yeah.
I didn't want to send my daughter to Vero Beach High. I'm be honest with you. But to listen, I mean, immediately you guys jumped on this. There wasn't this months and months. You and Dr. Moore said, here's what we need to do. So can you talk a little bit about that?
So massive credit to Deputy Mike Snowhill. He's the school resource deputy at Vero Beach High School. I walked into a football game and I was watching the lines. And I said, Mike was in charge of the security for the entire event. I said, Mike, what are we going to do about this? You know, the football game started. There are people still outside. They're frustrated. How can we get them in here faster? And he said, Sheriff, I've already got a proposal for you on these the latest and greatest metal detectors. You know, I love going to concerts, and I've walked through those metal detectors. I know how smooth and easy it is. And I figured, you know, only Disney and major concert venues have these. And, you know, they are expensive. There's no doubt about that. But before, we were wanding people. And so in conjunction with Dr. Moore, I approached him. I said, hey, let's split a set of these, and so we bought them before it was earlier. It was last year. It was like October of last year, and unfortunately, we had several gun incidents at Vero Beach High School. And at one point, Dr. Moore called and said, "Hey, do you think we can deploy them at Vero Beach High School tomorrow morning?" And I said, "Yeah, let's get it done." And so by the end of the week, we had those operational, and next thing you know, the school district bought them for Sebastian High School as well. They realized the value of those investments, and now everybody who comes into a dance, a football game, a basketball game, any of those things, they have to pass through those metal detectors. And so it's just an additional feeling of safety and security for our entire team and for everybody who's going to those events. So I'm proud of that partnership. I think Dr. Moore has done a great job, and we certainly appreciate him being willing to do that. We're going to try and buy a couple more sets of those metal detectors because they're just so easy. They're portable, and they work fantastic. So every school day, the kids are walking through them, and I think it's a feeling of safety as a parent.
Sure.
I'm a parent too, so feels good to know
and
that the kids
pretty
are safe.
smooth as far as how quickly. I mean, I haven't really heard much of too many complaints.
It was about a week that people complained, and then they figured out how to do it. And now it's not a thing.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's normal. Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's not the 80s anymore.
It's not.
Oh, right. I remember when we didn't have any fences there. We just walked in.
I remember 10 years ago going to Osceola Magnet saying, it's pretty easy to get on this campus.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, some of these places almost looking like jails. And, you know, down in Palm Beach where I grew up, these middle schools, there's 3 gates to get to that. And I mean, I think it was Beachland. And I was just like, wow, look at this. Like, you're not getting anywhere close to this front office.
It's a challenge because you don't want the kids and the parents to feel like they're walking into a jail. You want them to feel comfortable. You want them to feel it, but you also have to control because we've seen too many mass incidents around the country. And I feel like Florida has really stepped up. Parkland obviously was such a tragedy that our state said, we're not going to let this happen. And I think we've done a good job. I would put our district up against any others. I go to the sheriff's conferences and they play this sort of like slideshow of failures, and they'll go through and show open gates at schools. They'll show doors propped open, and I'm fortunate that every time I've gone, they've never had a photo of any river county. It's always been other counties. I won't mention what other counties, but you got to think a massive county like Orange County or Jacksonville, they've got hundreds of schools, and to try and maintain the security on that, very difficult. We are very blessed that I call us a Goldilocks county. They call our planet a Goldilocks planet. The idea that life could exist. I feel like we're still small town enough that you can go to a restaurant and see somebody that but you also know a whole lot. There's a lot of people you don't know there, right? And so I feel like we are small enough that we can still maintain safety and security over our schools, and our team is absolutely incredible, doing a great job.
That's awesome. Shifting gears, going to some of your innovative ideas. Talk to us about you wanting to open the jail as a shelter, Sheriff, Operation Frostbite.
Yeah.
Because that was something else that people said, what, where?
Well, that's another me being frustrated. I found that whenever it would get cold out, we would have homeless people who would commit crimes with the pure intention of just spending the night or a week or a month in jail while it's cold out. And I felt bad that our businesses were having, things happening as a result of that. And so this year we prepared Operation Frostbite. We didn't actually have to deploy it because the weather didn't get cold enough. But we are prepared that if the weather drops below, I think it's 40 degrees, we're prepared to take in any of the homeless folks that want to come stay with us. You don't have to commit a crime. You don't have to have any problems. We're just going to bring you in for the night, get you out of the cold, and then the next day you can leave. So it was really more of me trying to save tax dollars. It's ridiculous for somebody to go in the system and the judge has to deal with them and all that. And in hearing from the judges, Judge Benz comes to our meetings. The homeless issue, those folks who were committing crimes just to come stay in the jail, she was kind of frustrated with it too. So it's just a solution to a problem that we were having over there.
Sure. And many of these, all of these programs, not $1 of taxpayer is being used from the farm with the young ladies out there. I mean, talk more about all these different programs you got. You got goats at the jail. We talked to Captain Jones briefly. Now you got a baby calf, but not one taxpayer dollar is being used for any of these programs. Yeah,
so when our inmates make telephone calls, when they talk to their family, anything that they do, they buy commissary, all the dollars that are the profits, the proceeds of that come back to the agency to what's called the Inmate Welfare Fund. And those dollars can only be used for programs and things that benefit the inmates. And in the past, we bought, a new TV for the block or, bedding or whatever it is that we need. But at this point, we've raised enough money in those funds. Those are not taxpayer dollars. that we really got to spend it back on them. And so we put together quite a few good programs, and I think that the inmates are very happy with those programs, and they're seeing the benefit. So the dollars that their family is spending, because a lot of times it's the family putting in the money to their commissary, is working out really well.
I think that's pretty stinking amazing. So I would take it, Mike.
Well, before we leave today, first off, Sheriff, we want to thank you very much for what you're doing. You're bringing in community partners. When you think about protect and serve, sounds like you check mark both of them, Sheriff. So thank you very much for being here today. Once again, our two amazing sponsors, we wouldn't have this show. Adam Ogilve, Org Services, open 24/7. Go check out Org Services. Pedro Bernabe, Realtor for Dale Sorensen.
Also open 24/7.
Open 24/7. Buy, sell, commercial, residential. And as always, baby, it's I am, you are, we are. It's Team Success, Uplifting the Uplifters, your Indian River County Sheriff Edition. Thanks for watching.
Bye.